have already lost some time.
Sir.
Okay. Thank you, Deepak, for giving me this opportunity to speak with the students. And I hope we have got a number of students today to listen to my lecture on Russia and their relations. Let me start by saying that India has been roped into this debate, which is raging in the US government, particularly within the Trump administration, that India is caught up in this game of imports of crude oil from Russia. In fact, there are several comments made by top Indian US officials, like Vice President Vance, who said that US was imposing aggressive economic leverage on Russia, and that the way to Russia to put pressure on Russia passes through India. Then Peter Navarro, the trade advisor of the Trump administration, who has been very, very vocal and antagonistic towards India's role in this oil business. So he said that we are fighting Modi's war. And he told in a television interview, when the interviewer asked, is that Modi's war or Trump's war? So he said, no, it is Modi's war. And we want to specify that the money which India is making from its imports of crude from Russia is being funneled back to the Russian economy. And that enables Russia to use its weapons against Ukraine. And we are dead against Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And therefore, we feel that India has been fueling the Russian war against Ukraine, which has started from February 2022. This has been a very serious and severe allegation on India. And other commentators have also said that India is directly linked, but nobody has said so far that China, which is a larger importer of Russian crude, should also be taken on the same level as India. But on the contrary, US has a lot of leniency towards China, and they have given, in fact, a reprieve, 90-day reprieve to China for their trade negotiations, while the US government has suspended the ongoing US-India negotiations, trade negotiations. We are negotiating the bilateral trade agreement with US, which has been suspended. So, well, with this very severe punitive tariffs of 50% now, including 25% on the penalty, and earlier 25% tariffs, now it is a hefty tariff, which has completely disturbed the Indian market, the Indian government, the Indian trade and industry circles, and various other people linked to that. So India is in the process of seeing what are the available options, and all observers and commentators feel that India should lie low for the time being and not agitate. So far, India has not issued any counter statement against US's imposition of stiff tariffs on India, which is now the highest, excluding China, and taking at par with Brazil. So it has led to India seeking a number of options how to tackle. And one of the options India has thought is to come closer to Russia. So there comes Russia in the Indian thinking, along with China. But I'll take China in my next lecture because it's a heavy topic and one has to dilate it at some length. I'll take China maybe with some reference to Pakistan also, because it is equally important for you to understand the India, China, Pakistan triangle, and added to that is, of course, Russia. Now, let me go back a little bit on the historical background part. You see, even before India gained independence, Pandit Nehru, our, not prime minister then, but he was a big leader in the movement. He made a trip to Russia in 1927, and he came back with a very, very positive view of the Russian mode of development, the industrial development, the that was a part of the Bolshevik Revolution, and Russia was developing its industry very, very fast on a model which was not Western model of development. And Mr. Nehru was very impressed with that. So when he came back to India, he got a Congress resolution passed that India would develop relations with Russia. Russia would be the first countries with whom India would develop relations soon after independence, and it did. Though India adopted, as you know, the non-alignment policy of neither, that was the peak of the Cold War period, I must say, because 1947, the Cold War had started, and the Cold War, in fact, started from 1945, soon after the Second World War, and we got our independence in 1947. So it was in the throes of Cold War that India was intending to develop close with Russia. But there was soon after that, we have 1991 came, and India's economy was severely disturbed. We started having a very severe currency shortage, and all that happened. And then we had to restructure our economy in tune with the new process of globalization and liberalization at that time, what we said. So India's economy went very, very important, what at that time was called a seismic shift in India's economy. This was in the early 1990s, when even a lot of these East European countries were forming themselves and becoming independent, because Soviet Union had broken up. Soviet Union broke up around the same time, between 89 and 91, and there was a lot of these East European, what they were called a part of the Soviet Union republics, and including Central Asian republics also, the CARs. The CARs also started becoming independent, and so also several East European countries became independent. And now, well, there is no East and West in Europe. They all are either West or Central Europe. And they are all part of the EU system. And also many of them have joined the NATO. Now the NATO is also a problem in India's intense relations with Russia, because NATO was formed also in the Cold War period, and that was a Western alliance. And India had refused to be a part of the Soviet alliance at that time. We desisted, and the Soviet alliance, as you know, was called Warsaw Pact, and India had desisted to be a part of the Warsaw Pact. And there were other pacts at that time. SEATO came up, Southeast Asian Trade Organization, and CENTO came up as Central Command. CENTO is very much there, and I will talk to you about CENTO a little later during my talk on Pakistan. But now I would say that India has maintained traditional and historical, very friendly ties with Russia right from our independence days. And we have benefited largely in the areas of defense, in the areas of science and technical collaboration, in the areas of nuclear and space programs. So it has been a full throttle relationship between India and Soviet Union. And Soviet Union disappeared after 1991. So we had to even now start, building new relations with the new Russian regime. It was called Russian Federation, and then it became Russia. Federation was cut off. But we started building our relations with the new Russia formation, minus all the Central Asian republics, minus all the East European countries which were formed later. So Soviet Union was curtailed into just Russia. It became a much smaller country and a single country. It was no longer a federation. It stayed a Russian Federation for some time, but then again there were objections from the newly independent Central Asian republics. So it became Russia, just Russia. Now, we took some time because in the intervening period, there was a person called Yeltsin who became the president of Russia. And during Yeltsin's time, um, uh, it was very difficult situation for India to develop relations with the Russian government because Yeltsin was looking all the time towards the West. He was trying to emulate the West. He thought that the Western civilization is much more developed, much more industrial. So he said we need to have an alternative path of development to the Soviet model, which was prescribed by Stalin and which had already taken roots on the Russian soil. So Yeltsin was a, was an very critical time for Russia's development. Russia couldn't go either way, so their structures were getting stagnant, and this was a period when India's independence, independent India, and after the post-liberalization period was spreading its wings and getting integrated in the global economic system. It was tough time for both India and Russia during the Yeltsin period. But after Yeltsin came Putin, who is now the president of Russia. He came to power in the year 2000, at the beginning of the 20th century. And Putin's coming to power marked a new relationship with India because unlike Yeltsin, who was looking more towards the West, Putin understood the strategic importance of Asian countries and particularly India and China. And therefore he started working towards developing closer relations with India. India reciprocated, and this culminated in the 2010 strategic close and cooperation and strategic relationship with Russia that was signed between Russia and India in 2010. But before that, I would say that we have already entered into a treaty arrangement in 1971 with the Inter-Soviet Treaty, because a major treaty of friendship, cooperation, peace, friendship, and cooperation, which was signed just before the Indo-Pak War, just a year before the Indo-Pak War. And it is generally believed by observers that this treaty saved the day for India, because India then shoved off the US 7th Fleet, which was coming on the Bay of Bengal, approaching Indian waters. And there was this fight going on between Pakistan and then East Pakistan, between West and East Pakistan, which later formalized as Bangladesh. So the liberation of Pakistan happened with Indo-Pak War. At the end of Indo-Pak War, independent Bangladesh was declared on the 16th December 1971. But thereafter, India's relationships with Russia, then Soviet Union, as I said, had staggered for a while during the Yeltsin period. But after 1990s, and particularly at the beginning of the 21st century, we started galvanizing our relations with Russia in possibly all levels. And then Russia also helped us in moving out of several encumbrances, which happened with India's nuclear explosion in Pokhran in 1998. We had been subjected to heavy strictures by the Western countries and sanctions by US and many Western countries. Russia had not joined that, and in fact, Russia had saved us from various UN resolutions which had been moved by the Western countries at that time through its veto power. And we've had Russia to support us on several contentious issues in the UN, for example, on Kashmir, when Pakistan raises this issue, or China with Pakistan raised this issue, we have Russia to support us with its veto power. So these resolutions on Kashmir particularly are dropped. Then Russia also had been coming to our help on the political, because we've established a long cooperation with Russia, which got formed after Putin's coming to power. So Indian leadership has had close relations with Putin, and Putin's Russia. since the beginning of this century, of the 21st century. But it has come under some strain in the recent time, as you know, when Russia declared war on Ukraine, or rather a special military operation, as Russia said, from February 2022. This operations broke out, and then the main reason for Russia to go into war with Ukraine was to have Ukraine, not be a member of NATO, first of all, because Ukraine's borders touches on Russia's borders. So Ukraine is the closest neighbor of Russia, and there are a lot of people of Russian origin living in Ukraine, particularly on the eastern part of Ukraine, which is called the Donbas region. So Russia's main intention was, after it had got Crimea, which happened in 2014, and this war started in 2022, to accumulate or take into possession several other territories of Ukraine and expand the Russian territories beyond Ukraine into Ukraine. So that was the Russian game. And we have seen now with the Alaskan meeting between President Trump and Putin, which was much more expected out of the summit, which happened on 15th August. But nothing much came out of the summit. There was no concrete outcome of the summit. There was no ceasefire declared between Russia and Ukraine. In fact, Russia resisted a ceasefire completely, and it said that if we have to have an agreement, we are perhaps agreeable for an agreement, direct agreement with Ukraine, but not the ceasefire. So US also took that position, and after 3 days, on August 18, when the US government held a meeting with Ukraine, and Zelensky was in the White House along with several other NATO member countries, seeking to discuss how to stop the war with Russia. There were some decisions taken at the time. European members were particularly concerned about European security, and they felt that Putin's advance into Ukraine would be a singular threat to European security. So many European countries have joined up against Putin and Russia, in fact. And then Zelensky was directly attacked, and Zelensky wanted some security guarantees for Ukraine, and the US promised that security guarantees. US also promised that as a NATO member, as the founder of NATO, under Article 5 of NATO, there's a provision that if any member country of the NATO is attacked, then other countries are also attacked. Though Ukraine is not a member of NATO, which US was trying very hard to get Ukraine into NATO, but Putin spoiled that game. But then still, US since long time, including even in the Biden administration, has been forever supporting Ukraine with arms, with diplomatic support, with all kinds of possible financial supports. And it has so far given huge, estimated to be around in the figure of $90 billion so far. US has aided Russia, and now there is one latest, cache of missiles, which are the very, very, advanced technology missiles, which have been given to NATO, which has been paid for by NATO, because Trump insisted that hereafter there will be no free lunch for NATO, and all members, EU members, have to pay for whatever they buy from US. So it has been a purchase, and so this is an about $825 million package, which US has recently sent out to NATO for NATO members, giving that to Ukraine. So Europe is now the funnel between USA and Ukraine, and that has happened after the failure of the Alaskan summit, because Trump had lost all his cards there, and then they want to renew their aggressive stance against Russia, and they are making India a scapegoat in this game. So as I said, now various Trump officials are putting out a lot of these critical messages about India, and this messaging is definitely detrimental, both to India's relations with US as well as India's relations to Russia. However, given India's national security prerogatives and its interest in preserving a balance in its energy security, India has gone on to import oil, and in fact, it has increased its imports of oil. So we used to import, let's say, about our imports had risen before the Ukraine war. It was like maybe $1 billion of imports, but now it has increased to nearly 42 billion, and that is a huge amount. So leaving apart energy imports from Russia, our bilateral basket between India and Russia is not much. It is stagnant at the level of $10 billion. And during the recent visits of both our NSA, Mr. Doval and Mr. Jaishankar, our foreign minister to Russia, this was taken up by India, particularly with the Putin government, that we need to increase our bilateral trade and investments with Russia. Of course, some connectivity projects were energized, like the Chennai Vladivostok corridor, trade corridor, and the north-south transport corridor, which are very important issues for India-Russia developing relations. We have also asked Russia for rights to have oil exploration rights in Sakhalin. We have got a Sakhalin. This is in the extreme eastern part of Russia, where we have got a oil exploration contract, and then we are also looking at other possible oil exploration ventures, joint ventures with Russia. This is an important area. The other important area is Russia building nuclear power plants for India. And as you know, in Kudankudam power plant, Russia has committed to build 6 units, out of which 2 units have already started functioning. This is a very important nuclear development, peaceful nuclear policy between India and Russia. And this has happened over a period of time. And now Russia has committed to develop 4 more units of this nuclear energy plants. Now, the other important aspect of India-Russia relations is its defense relations. The defense relations have started from the very beginning. We have been in a way linked to steady Russian supplies, and at that time there was this ruble-rupee trade for some time, and Russia refused to anymore take rupee as a trade currency, and therefore we started trading in dollar. Now that came under sanctions when Russia entered into a war with Ukraine, and therefore we have now to explore other avenues. Now I will talk about SCO in a minute, but for the moment I can say that India's defense cooperation with Russia has continued over the years since 1947 or maybe mid 1950s, when we started doing our collaboration with Russia in production of MiG aircraft and various versions of MiG aircraft, and then we also got the Su aircraft from Russia, and therefore we have moved on. And then Russia gave what they call the S-400, which is an air defense system which worked very well during the recent India-Pakistan conflict, in warding off Pakistan missiles and Turkish supplied drones to Pakistan. And therefore now our Prime Minister has declared in his latest address from the Red Fort on 15th August that we are going to develop indigenously something called a Sudarshan Chakra, which he said, and the CDS, Anil Chauhan, he specified that this Sudarshan Chakra will be both a sword and a shield. A sword to fight on the offensive side, and a shield to deter any kind of aggression on the defensive side. So it will be both a defense offense weapon, which India will will have, manufacture indigenously, as the Prime Minister said, over a period of 10 years. But I don't think India has the luxury of waiting for 10 years. It has to develop its military, arsenal very quickly, either by developing it itself through DRDO or other private agencies, because India is now freed up its defense sector to the private sector. And therefore, we need to have a lot of defense preparedness for India, which we saw during the during this India-Pakistan conflict, that we were, of course, we were several notches above Pakistan's air defense system. However, we have to further build on our military preparedness. That is one point which we need to take into account. And those of you who are preparing for further competitive exams, I think this will be a very big issue, the defense cooperation issue between India and Russia. So now defense, science and technology, space, because as you know, we have collaborated with the Russians on the space program, and then economic cooperation. So there is also a security angle to it, and we have had an elaborate security, agreement with Russia. But all this was until Russia-China entente happened, and when this happened, China became a frontal partner of Russia, and because China was adversarial towards India, and now it is of course changing, because now Prime Minister Modi from Japan, he goes to China. In fact, he reaches China tomorrow for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. However, China has become more lenient towards India, and India vice versa. And we had Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, visit to India recently, and then India and China have shown considerable warming up in the relations, which started from the meeting which Prime Minister Modi had with President Xi Jinping in Russia, in Kazan, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in 2024 October. So since then, India and China have to some extent warmed up their relations, which had been frozen after the Galwan clashes of 2020, and we have had no relationship with China at all on the diplomatic and political side, though our trade with China has been going fast, and China has been gaining a lot. And today we stand with a nearly 100 billion deficit against China in our trade, which is again a very big concern for India, because we have to make up for that. We have to build our manufacturing sector, because our manufacturing sector is going down from 18% recently until now. The projection is about 13 to 14% of GDP, which we have to boost. But we are heavily dependent on China's, on imports from China, because they are giving us the intermediaries through which we manufacture and export to other countries. So if China stopped their supply of what we call intermediaries, like in pharmaceuticals, APIs and all, we will not be in a position to be a leader of pharmaceuticals or other provisions which India has been exporting to other countries. So our dependence on China is quite huge. It is going up, and we have to stop that. We have to curb that, and instead we have to be more, self-sufficient in our manufacturing, in our development projects, and we want to do a lot of reforms. The reforms are very much needed. So that is where now I enter into Prime Minister Modi's visit. He has already finished the Japan leg, and tomorrow he is about to reach China for the SCO summit. I will say that SCO, which was a grouping which started in 2001, soon after Putin's coming to Russia, because earlier China had set up a group called Shanghai 5 in the mid-90s, with China and the 4 CARs, which had been liberated from Soviet Union, had broken up from Soviet Union. Now China, along with 4 CARs, had set up the Shanghai 5, and therefore 5 members of Shanghai Cooperation. And this later developed in 2001, became Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And Russia joined soon after Putin's coming. And this kind of 7-member grouping was enlarged to the other, Uzbekistan in due course became 8. And now in 2010, both India and Pakistan joined SCO. So now it's a very, very strategic period for us when Mr. Modi goes to attend the SCO summit, because SCO is now increasing its profile like BRICS, and it is developing into a very, very strong grouping for the global south. And India is scrambling to take an important position within the SCO as well as BRICS groupings. Now, what is going to happen, as observers believe, that there will be a loosening of the dependence on the US dollar for international transactions among the both BRICS members as well as SCO members, and that is spearheaded by China and Russia, because they want to get away from the US zone of influence and take out a lot of these countries, emerging economies with them who want to be part of SCO. This SCO summit will see a large number of countries from Asia, from Africa, and even from Latin America, South America, wishing to join the SCO. And I think China and Russia will be very liberal in accepting these members. So SCO will grow in size. And the biggest thing which may happen in this summit, and which has sent alarm down the US spine, is that there will be a move for de-dollarization, a formal move for de-dollarization, and there will be a BRICS currency formalized for trading, for intra-BRICS trading between BRICS members on this with this BRICS currency. So the problem is that US has imposed a lot of sanctions, and the dollar is supposed to be the guiding currency in global transaction. So SCO is trying to move away from that orbit and give full scope to the BRICS, the SCO currency, and even the BRICS is delivering that kind of a message that they will be a BRICS currency, and these two currencies will merge and become a strong, very strong alternative currency to the dollar. And that is what observers believe will put an end to the threat of US sanctions on any and every member which the US doesn't like. And now countries like us, India, has been also subjected to this punitive tariffs, and we have also been subjected to some kind of sanctions when US imposed sanctions on Iran, and we couldn't trade much in Iranian oil. After that, we had to stop, because Iran was the third largest exporter of oil to India, but that stopped with the US imposing heavy sanctions on Iran, and we had to resort to some kind of interim arrangement. We used to buy crude from the offshore oil, all these ships floating around with oil, and we used to take some Iranian oil from them, because there are certain refineries in India which are particularly geared towards refining Iranian oil. And now we are taking a lot of Russian crude, and that is refined in more importantly in the Vadinar refinery in Gujarat, and then it is re-exported to countries in Europe and other countries. And with the profits what we are gaining, we are recycling into our economy, and then we are also buying new weapon system from Russia, and we are entering into new trade deals with other countries. So the allegation of US that India is the road through which US will pass to Russia, and the war will stop with Russia, between Ukraine and Russia, that is a tall proposition, because now the Russian Foreign Minister, Mr. Lavrov, talking to NBC, ruled out categorically that there can be no talks with Ukraine in the near future. There will be no ceasefire, and Russia has certain terms, and the terms are basically that Ukraine should never join the NATO, and give an assurance to that effect. And then other very important term is that Ukraine will never be part of the European group of countries to challenge Russia. And more importantly, which is the most important clause, is that Ukraine should part with its eastern region of Donbass. And Donbass has two very lucrative provinces Luhansk and Donetsk, Lugansk and Donetsk. So these are very important regions of Ukraine, which is now completely destroyed with Russian bombardment. In fact, the latest bombardment Russia did was on the 28th August, where they have heavy shelling, very heavy shelling on the capital, Kyiv. And Kyiv, nearly one-fourth of Kyiv was destroyed. Their power and energy installations were destroyed. Russia launched like 580 plus drones on Ukraine, and it also launched some 40-50 missiles on Ukraine, particularly Kyiv, and they have killed, this particular Russian invasion has killed about 34 Ukrainians as per conservative estimate. There could be more, including children. And so this has the UN immediately convened an emergency meeting, and then it denounced this particular attack on Ukraine, on civilian structures of Ukraine. They have destroyed a lot of buildings in Kyiv. And now, as you know, Putin has been declared by the International Criminal Court as an offender because of this war, because of killings, indiscriminate killings, and taking children, Ukrainian children, as hostages, which is against international rules of combat. So now Mr. Putin is declared by the ICC as a war criminal, something like what Netanyahu has also been declared in terms of its Israel's conflict with Palestine, but that's a different issue. Therefore, Putin does not go into countries which are members of the ICC. India is not a member of ICC. So we have a bilateral summits, leader summits between our, leader to leader summits. So this time it is the Russian side's term. Therefore, Mr. Putin, the Putin visit has now been confirmed for December this year. At the end of this year, President Putin is going to visit India. By that time, of course, a lot of developments would have happened on the Russia-India front, and our warming up to Russia and our, thawing our relations with China will also come into play. We don't know how far our relations of thawing with China will go, given China's very, very strong relations with Pakistan, because Pakistan has always been a thorn on our skin. And we saw the recent, terrorist massacres, and the LET through his front organization was behind this attack. And we also saw a 4-day air combat between India and Pakistan, in which both parties fought. And then, of course, all these games happened, like President Trump claiming that he had brought in the ceasefire, and that was denied by the Indian side. And perhaps that is one of the major reasons why Trump feels hurt. His ego has not been massaged properly, so he has imposed these punitive tariffs on India. That is one theory, but that is not a very acceptable theory, though you have to give some credit to the huge megalomaniac that the American president has become. And because he's got unanimous support of his party in both the Senate and they have majority in both the Senate and the House, and of course in the White House, Trump is all powerful. He has a cabinet which is servile to Trump, and therefore he has no opposition whatsoever. So now India is in a very strategically important position, and during the recent visit of EM Jaishankar, he made a very important announcement that India's relations with Russia are among the steadiest relations India has had with any big power. We must note that in the world today, in the constellation of global powers, there are three global powers now, and those three are US, Russia, and China. There is no fourth global power. But India is, you can say, an emerging major power. You can write also about that. And it is part of the emerging economies group, which India is a part, is a leader of the BRICS group of emerging economies. And of course, now it's also a member of the SCO. But there's a catch here in SCO, because when Prime Minister Modi goes to China tomorrow to attend the SCO summit, 2-day summit, August 31st and September 1, he will confront Pakistan there, because Pakistan is also a member of SCO. And that will be kind of a diplomatic engagement, which will be very, very tricky for India. India has to play its cards very, very carefully, because India is now crafting a softer policy towards China. India is also getting into more closer relation with Russia. So this is, I can say, inflection point for Indian foreign policy. And we will see for the next consecutive 2 days what happens in SCO, because in SCO defense ministers meeting, our defense minister had moved a resolution on the Pahalgam, and after that the terrorist attacks from the Pakistani side, and Pakistan had made strong objections, and therefore this resolution had been dropped at Pakistan's. Maybe this will be a repeat again in the summit level, because Pakistan is being represented by the Prime Minister now, and India is represented by our Prime Minister, with both Putin and Xi flanking this SCO summit. So it's going to be a very, very important discussion for the next 2 days. I will come to that in more detail. Maybe now the time is really off, and if there are some questions, I'll take it before we close for the day. But this is what I can recap. The relations between India and Russia, they're too vast, and one can't cover the entire gamut of relations in just 50 minutes time or less. So I leave it to you how you develop your points based on this lecture. And then if there are further clarifications, we'll have another session as I have suggested. And I think I am getting question, after SCO meeting, can we expect any trade opportunities? Yes, of course, we have to develop more trade and investment with the CARS, Central Asian republics, and that is an important part of our foreign policy, because we have not made much headway in the CARS, and we need to do that, because we need to enlarge our trade and investment basket now. In much of the neglected areas where India has not gone for so far, for example, this Central Asian region is one largely untapped, because they are full of mineral resources, full of oil and gas. So we need to tap this, this investment opportunities there. We also go into South America in a big way, because there are major powers there in South America. For example, Brazil is waiting to be, to come into a collaborative venture with India. We have to take Brazil into more and more collaborative ventures. So also Argentina, big powers in South America. So India has to enlarge and not centered around just US and Russia and China. Of course, they are the core. They constitute the core periphery of our foreign policy, but they need not be all. They need not be all. We have to build relations with other countries also, so that we get some flexibility. We have some maneuverability. We have some balancing to do between this power and that power, because now everyone is on its own in this global, geopolitical world, and everyone is using that its own strategic interests is taking into account, and everyone is building a kind of a multilateral framework in which we are organizing, except Trump's USA at this time. Trump wants to pursue bilateral negotiations with countries on the tariffs issue. He has junked the WTO. Now China and India would come together to revive the WTO, because US has refused to join the WTO, particularly because it has embraced bilateralism instead of multilateralism, which the rest of the world believes in. And rest of the world believes in bringing about a more stronger multipolar world with several poles, and India would be one of the poles. India is one of the poles, but Russia and China would be bigger poles than India. And China's voice, particularly in the SCO, counts a lot, because China had been from the beginning, as I said, from 1995, when the Shanghai Five, was formed by China, and soon after, when SCO was formed in 2001, the Shanghai Five group of 5 countries, they merged in the SCO, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization now has 11 members. We are expecting more number of countries to join SCO. So that would be for a later discussion, but let me stop here. I think we can.
One question from my side, sir. We have a strained relationship with China. everywhere in the international platform, China is blocking India, whether it may be UN Security Council or NSC group, everywhere. And China and Pakistan, we know they are all weather friends. So in this situation, the tariff from Trump and also as you have already discussed in the last class, like Pakistan is now more closer to US. So how do you see the China? China is going to help India in this tariff war?
You see, China has already agreed to export certain items to India following Mr. Jaishankar's visit to Beijing, recent visit to Beijing, and then Wang Yi's visit to India. Sorry, and China has agreed to export particularly rare earths, machinery, fertilizers, specialized fertilizers, and boring equipment to bore, dig tunnels. But China has started, doing, exporting critical items for India. That is number one. Number two, China has been making very warm statements on India of late and saying that yes, it supported the Indian position on going strong against the US attack on tariffs. Of course, India has lied low for now. We have not issued any strong official reaction to US imposition of punitive tariffs. And China has supported our stand on independently importing oil from Russia, because China is importing more oil from Russia. So it has supported that. And also the Russia-China, this agreement which they have had between the two countries, they are getting more and more closer to India. As we see, they are warming up to India, and therefore India is particularly have to develop better relations with China. We have no option because we have put most of our trade in the China basket. We have a huge, as I said, a deficit against China of more than $1,000 billion. We need to recoup this. We need to bridge this deficit, because that plays havoc with the. So what I would suggest is, yes, China will continue to support Pakistan in global fora, because they have a very, very, as you said, ironclad relation, and they are very strong. And Pakistan is adversarial towards India. And now Pakistan will flex its muscles when we go for the SCO summit tomorrow. And then Pakistan will forever block India's moves towards a resolution on the terrorist attacks, recent terrorist attacks, which came from Pakistan territory. And when we dug out 9 terrorist hideouts, we more or less more than 100 terrorists based in Pakistan were neutralized. Several terrorist hideouts were destroyed, and India came back with the satisfaction. It has also destroyed several strategic Pakistani airports and airfields and all that. So it was a strategic gain for India, but at a heavy cost, because we lost civilian lives and all. So to answer your question, yes, China will continue to back Pakistan, but China will also start warming up to India, because India has sent feelers through Wang Yi's visit, through Jaishankar's visit, through defense minister and other ministers' visit to China, that we need this relationship with China. It's a matter of mutual need, as we say, mutual sensitivities, mutual respect, and mutual, needs for each other's, cooperation. So we have developed this way. It will gradually fructify. We don't know how far it will go, because Pakistan will always apply pressure on China not to go very far with India. So we have to play the game. We have to be more and more self-sufficient in every field possible, not only in trade, not only in our economic development, but also in our foreign policy projection. And we need to have some assets which we must develop in India, which we have. For example, our liberal democratic values, our constitutional values, they have to be upheld, more and more when India seeks a power projection. Our power projection will be based basically on domestic power. Our domestic heft through economic heft will come, and then we have to go for military preparedness, which is also both military and economic developments have to go side by side. And India has to be militarily as well as economically prepared for any eventuality in the future, adverse eventuality. We have to guard against cross-border terrorism. India will make a pitch for cross-border, to support for cross-border, against cross-border terrorism. But I'm not sure whether that pitch will go down well or not with Pakistan's stubborn resistance. And at that time, I think Russia and China will go neutral because they will indirectly support Pakistan. So India's support base within SCO, I don't see much, which is far more in BRICS. We have sort of, avoided getting closer to BRICS under US pressure. Maybe we should look more and more at the South. These are the two major groupings now coming up in the South, in the global South, and India should develop more relations within the global South, because ultimately India's future lies in the global South, which is nearly 80% of global output, global manufacturing, population. All those indicators you take, the global South occupies 80% of the global landscape, and the global North, consisting of the G7 and other European countries and America, the remaining 20%. So it is India's choice whether it goes with 80% or goes with the 20%. I think it has got good feelers and good support from the South, the global South countries. I think, in my view, India should be more and more, have close relations with the global South countries.
Okay.
I think I'll end here. And,
Sir.
I think it's time now.
Thank you so much, sir, for this session. हमें डिटेल तो पूरा इंडिया रशिया रिलेशनशिप पूरा हमरो इंडिपेंडेंस रो टिल नाउ को भले हमरो रिलेशनशिप अछि एंड सब बळे हमरो कुहा जाय जे कि 100टा नुवा फ्रेंड अपेक्षा गोटे ओल्ड आउट ट्रस्टेड फ्रेंड होची सब बळे रशिया रही आसी छै एंड ऑलवेज इट विल बी देयर तो एंड एबे जो पोजीशन रे भी हमें रशिया हमको सब बळे सपोर्ट करी आसी छै सो किंतु ए जो हमें कहले रिलेशनशिप रे आपण जेमति कहले कि काली रा दिनटा वेरी वेरी इंपोर्टेंट एससीओ मीटिंग रे को भला डेवलपमेंट होची वेदर आपण जेमति कहले कि ओटे नुवा करेंसी रो मे बी ब्रिक्स करेंसी आसी पारे मे बी डी डॉलराइजेशन ऊपर हमर हे पारे मे बी हमर ए जो ट्रेड टैरिफ ऊपर हमें कहूचे तांकू माने केमति बायलैटरल जेमती आपण कहले जे निजर करेंसी रे हमें ट्रेड करूचे रशिया संगे सिमिलरली मे बी एथरे डिफरेंट कंट्री संगे ए भला डेवलपमेंट होई पारे सो दैट द मोनोपोली ऑफ द डॉलर हो कि यूएस हो कोठी ना कोठी एटा हमरो निहादी भाबरे तांको ओडे वन वार्निंग देला भले हमरो सिचुएशन आसीबो थैंक यू सो मच सर फॉर दिस सेशन वी होप कि आपण निश्चित भाबरे हमको आहुरी भी जो अपकमिंग सेशन आसुची चाइना हो कि अदर गुडा को इट्स रियली हमको बहुत माने हमें कहबा एते इनसाइटफुल सेशन रहूची गोटे घंटा भितरे इट इज इक्विवेलेंट टू गोटे 10 आवर्स रो सेशन सुनिबा जहा आपनकर गोटे घंटार लेक्चर एंड नॉन स्टॉप आपण एते एनर्जेटिक आ नॉन स्टॉप भाबरे कहउचंदी माने इट्स रियली इंटरेस्टिंग आ एंगेजिंग आल्सो and insightful also thank you so much sir mane apan mane amku time douchanti and talking to the students who are going to appear the interview जोटा कि very very crucial topic जोटा को बर्तन आपण कहउचंती रशिया हो कि चाइना हो these are the hot topic जोटा कि upcoming interview रे गोटे insightful आ सेमान को पय एटा बेटर माने mark secure करियर भी help thank you so much sir
one suggestion I have before we leave in case a lecture offline lecture could be organized during my visit to Bhubaneswar shortly, we'll organize, we'll mutually talk about it and see how best it develops, because I think there are many questions still with the students, and we could have an offline session and answer some of these queries. They are, as you said, very important for them in their exam now and later. So we can think of something later.
Thank you so much, sir. Good night, sir. And
you're welcome.
yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Good night to everybody. Thank you.